Harlequin Desire, Cowgirls Don't Cry, Red Dirt Royalty by Silver James. She pushed to a sitting position and stared at Chance. He leaned against the wall, his legs out in front of him, eyes closed. But she seriously doubted he was asleep? What did you do to him? Chance didn't bother to open his eyes. I didn't do a damn thing. You were here in the barn, Chance, alone, and he was fine when I left to mend the fence. He opened his eyes and leveled a look at her that might have chilled her to the bone if she hadn't been so full of righteous anger. She kept pushing. You show up here all solicitous and kind and wanting to help. Who the hell are you, Chance? Why do you care? You obviously have money. You drive a brand new truck. You live in a fancy condo down in the Bricktown. Hell, I don't even know what you do for a living. You aren't a cowboy, as much as you might pretend to be. You aren't. I'm a lawyer. That stopped her cold, her mouth hanging open just as she was about to start a new tirade. She snapped her jaw closed and stared at him in consternation. A lawyer? He shrugged. I've been a cowboy, too. I used to rodeo a long time ago. Something about his expression triggered a memory, but she shoved it aside. So what? You play at being a cowboy now? And how did you know my dad? Why were you at his funeral? I was there to see you. That shocked her silly. Me? Her voice squeaked, and she swallowed around the frog in her throat. The colt stirred as if it sensed her upset, so she roped in her emotions. After several deep breaths, she continued in her voice, calm now. I never met you before Chicago. Why were you looking for me? I just was. She grimaced. That's certainly cryptic. Can you be a little more specific? No, the reason doesn't matter, but this does. Do you really believe I would hurt the colt? Hurt any animal? His face remained expressionless, but for a narrowing of his eyes and a slight jut of his chin, his voice sounded cold, and she decided right then she never wanted to be on the wrong side of the courtroom from him. I don't get you, Chance. I don't know why you're here. Geez. We've had some good times. Sex, granted, the sex was fantastic, but what? We didn't have sex, Cassie. I made love to you. He choked off whatever he was going to say, but stayed on the offensive. Is that all you can manage? Just sex? What's your deal? Relationships too sticky for you? She rocked back from the anger in his voice. Whoa, dude, back right the hell up. You're the one who didn't return my calls. I couldn't. Couldn't? What? You flushed your phone down the toilet? Your dog ate it? Oh, wait, you don't have a dog, she glared at Buddy. You just steal mine. There are extenuating circumstances. He clenched his jaws and the words gritted out between his lips stretched right through his teeth. Extenuating circumstances? What's that? Legalese for I can't be bothered? Chance rubbed his temples, eyes closed. When he spoke, he seemed to have a leash at his temper. That's not fair, Cass. You have no idea what's going on. What's at stake? She wanted to throw her hands up in the air and scream, but Doc was restless again. She bridled her emotions through her anger. In response, hissed out, How the hell am I supposed to know if you don't tell me? He ground his teeth together. I can't tell you, not right now. He dragged his fingers of one hand through his hair and sighed. His gaze caught her and held hers. Please, can you just trust me for a little while longer? So many replies popped out of her head. Why should I? How can you ask that? Oh, hell no. But as she looked at his face, recognized the pleading for understanding in his eyes, the grim set of his mouth, which all showed a crack in emotions, he did his best to stonewall deep inside. None of those admonitions worked. Between one thundering beat of her heart and the next, she knew the answer. Yes. Chapter 12. By the time the vet left, Cass felt exhausted. Her arm was still ached from the booster, and the bandages over the deeper cut of the arm itched. Chance walked the man out, and only did she stop to wonder why there'd been no mention of the bill at all. She stroked the colt's neck, hoping her touch would keep him calm. The vet had done what he could, telling her to watch him for further signs of distress and to call if Doc wasn't better in a few hours. They'd have to get him up on his feet every hour or so and walk him to help ease the blockage in his intestines. Colic. One of the worst things that could happen to a horse. The little guy snuffled as he labored to breathe, and her eyes prickled with tears as she listened to him wheeze. She considered selling him as a way to get money, but she just knew she couldn't, especially not now. Betty crept into the stall and curled in beside her. His head was on her knees. The dog whined softly and stared up at her with big brown eyes, as if to say, I have faith in you. You're my human. You'll make it. Right. She ruffled his ears. I hope so, Buddy. I hope so. Chance reappeared moments later, boots a few steps behind. The older man carried a couple of quilts and a pillow. Chance had mugs of coffee, handed her one. She accepted the cup and stared at the contents, muddy brown. Just the right color when cream and coffee achieved the perfect blend. One sugar, right? She nodded dumbly. The man remembered how she drank her coffee. Thought you might as well be comfortable, baby girl. Boots' voice broke her rumination. He spread out one quilt after shooting Buddy away and left the other folded on top with a pillow. Gonna be a long night. He turned toward Chance, and Cass recognized a look of distrust crossing Boots' face. I'll stay up with Cass, Boots. I'll call if we need help. There was that look again. Cass' attention ping-ponged between the two men. There was definitely defiance and dismissal in Chance's voice, along with a hint of challenge. But Boots didn't rise to the occasion. Instead, he focused on her. You need anything at all, baby girl? You just holler. I'll come running. Cass made a show of straightening the quilt and getting settled on as if the old man shuffled out. She stretched out on her side, the pillow bunched under her head, one hand stroking the colt's neck. An uncomfortable silence descended on the stall, but she wasn't going to be the one to break it. She fidgeted but couldn't get comfortable. After 30 minutes, she gave up. We should try to get him on his feet and walk him. Chance said nothing as he stood and helped her push and pull the colt. Only a yearling. The little guy wasn't close to being a full grown, but he was big enough for the two of them and had trouble. He wobbled on his legs, maneuvered a tentative step as Cass led him from the stall. She walked him up and down the center run of the barn so many times she lost count, but by the time her legs started to ache, the colt walked a little easier once back in the stall, though, and he flopped in the straw with a distressed whinny. Chance had rearranged the blanket and pillow now and sank down on the quilt before Cass could say anything. He patted the space next to him. She made a face but joined him, realizing too late that he'd raised an arm and she was now snuggled up against his side. Her nostrils flared at the scent of his cologne, and her stomach did a darn good impression of a bowl of gelatin. Why did this man tie her up in knots, physically and emotionally? What would be so terrible about just letting him take some of her troubles? Not forever. No, not that. She could never relinquish control forever. But what was the harm in sharing the burden just for a little while? Just long enough to get back on her feet. I don't think I'm going back to Chicago, she stiffened. Oh, he said the word carefully. I can't leave here, not yet anyway. I had my neighbor box up and sell all my stuff. It might not be much, but this is home. Something shifted in her heart. Home. This had always been home. She'd been too blind to realize it. That's not true, Cass. She started to bristle, but his hand squeezed her shoulder and she realized he relaxed. This place is a hell of a lot. Your dad worked hard to build the Crazy M and to make a home for you. You might not have wanted to be here, but you always knew you could come back. She nodded, her cheek rubbing against the soft material of his shirt. I tried to run away. Then I tried to stay away. And then I felt guilty because I hated this place. But I really didn't. She squiggled her nose to chase away the burn of forming tears. Do you think Daddy understood? Did he know why I wasn't here? Chance dropped a kiss on the top of her head. Did you get to say goodbye? Cass inhaled and held her breath to ease the pain in her chest, exhaling slowly. She shook her head. She had to swallow before she could speak. Sort of. I was on the phone with him when he passed. She felt Chance wince, and she brushed her palm again along his abdomen. That night at the hotel in Chicago, I waited too long and got caught by that blizzard. Boots put the phone up by Daddy's ear. He told me cowgirls don't cry. They just get back on and ride. He used to say that when I was little. She snuggled closer to Chance, seeking the warmth and gentleness of his embrace. I guess I've been doing that ever since I got here. He tilted her head and leaned down to kiss her lips. Her lips, full and firm, danced across her mouth as if seeking permission. She pressed against into the kiss, her lips parting in the invitation. His hand caressed her side, and his fingertips teased the swell of her breast before his palm cupped her fully. Her breath hitched as she sighed. Cass trailed her hand down those firm, rippled abs of his and found what really interested her. Oh, yeah. He was glad to see her. She stroked him through his jeans, and he arched against her hand. Damn, girl, I want you. Not the most romantic declaration, yet it was straight to her core. She wanted him with a fierceness she'd never experienced. She freed her other arm and fumbled with his buttons. Here, let me. While he dealt with his buttons, fly, and boots, she did the same. She kicked off her boots, peeled out of her jeans and t-shirt, and she was down to her bra and panties when he growled, No, mine. She stopped as he took over. He was already naked, but she didn't have time to admire him. His mouth covered hers as he unhooked her bra and slipped its straps off her shoulders. You are so beautiful, Casty Morgan, he whispered against her skin as his mouth dipped to find a nipple. She bowed her back and threaded her fingers through his hair. Oh, the things this man could do with his tongue. She squirmed, pressing her thighs together. One of his hands dipped low, and his strong fingers found her wet and ready. He groaned against her breast as his erection pressed against her thigh. Cass wrapped her fingers around his shaft, and he groaned again, only this time he tried to say something. He raised his head to gaze at her. His face flushed, and his eyes radiated desire and regret. He inhaled sharply, finally managed a complete sentence. I want to be inside you, darling, but I don't have a condom. She was so with that program because that's exactly where she wanted him, until he admitted that he wasn't a Boy Scout. Oh, that one syllable was filled with disappointment, but at the same time she had to respect him. She stroked his erection and offered a little smile. We go to Plan B? He blinked at her, his confusion showing in his expression. She wiggled loose, then kissed her way down his chest. The moment he figured out her intentions, all the air whooshed from his lungs. Gripping her in one hand, she held him still as she wet her lips with her tongue, her eyes glued on his face. He gulped and held his breath. She dipped her head and her lips glided over him. His hands clutched her head, fingers fighting her ponytail until her hair fell around her shoulders. He held her still for a moment, and he throbbed against her palm. Easy, baby, I'm already primed. She raised her head, but not for long, giving him a swirl with her tongue. I'll be gentle. She didn't hide the smirk on her face. After a wink and a cheeky grin, she went right back to work. Chance thought he might die before she finished him off. Cassie had tricks that he'd never experienced, and he had experienced a lot. Sated and lazy, he managed to pull her up to lay next to him, her head just below his shoulder. He hugged her loosely with one arm as her hand alternated between playing with her hair on his chest and places lower. He was not a man who kept a woman in bed overnight, but he wanted to spend the night with this woman in his arms. Wanted to spend every night with her. He hadn't dated anyone ever since he'd first seen her in Chicago. Hadn't even looked at another woman. He had feelings for her, but couldn't define them. The Barons didn't exactly have a great track record when it came to a long-term relationship. Yet this woman touched something deep inside him, a place he wasn't aware of until she came into his life. He kissed the top of her head and brushed her in. Her hair smelled faintly of sweat and citrus, and his stomach tightened. She nuzzled his skin in a sleepy kiss, and settled her in just to hold her. He'd make sure that she was satisfied as she made him when she woke up. For now, she seemed as content as he was. A few minutes later, the colt stirred but didn't try to get up. Cassie woke instantly, but Chance tightened his arms around her. He's just moving around, darling. It's okay. We'll walk him here in a few minutes. First, though, I have my own plan B to implement. Her lips curled in a cat and cream smile, and her eyes twinkled. He slid down her belly until he found a breast with lips and tongue. He started a slow, sweet assault, gratified with her breath hitched and her legs twitched. He smothered a hand down her side and cupped the curve of her ass for a gentle squeeze before he pulled her knee over his hip. His fingers dipped lower, finding her sweet spot. Her sharp exhilaration ruffled his hair, and he smiled, his tongue still flicking over the pebbled nipple. He pushed one finger inside her, and the inner muscles gripped him with wet ferocity. He added a second, and she rocked against his hand. He let her set the pace. This time was for her. All her. He wanted her to come, saying his name. Cass panted, and each breath pushed her breast against his tongue. He discovered that his own breathing matched hers, and even as her heart thundered beneath his ear, his heart galloped along. He hardened to the point of pain, but didn't care. His fingers caressed and teased, driving her hips to thrust harder and faster. He found her magic button with his thumb and savored her gasp. Yes, yes, oh yes. She didn't shout it, she whimpered, and at that was even sweeter to his ears. His erection throbbed in time to the clenches her muscles made around his fingers. He rubbed against the firm thigh, and the friction making him even harder. Come, baby. That's my girl. Come for me. Show me how beautiful you are. Oh, Chance. His name sighed across her lips, and he felt himself tighten, damned if he wasn't going to come again with her this time. That's it, honey. Yes, come on. His hips surged against her, rocking with the same rhythm as hers. She whimpered, and a soft cry escaped her right before she inhaled. A shudder rocked her body, and he exploded, and she called his name, Chance. Her fingers dug into his shoulders, and he lifted his head, seeking her lips. He kissed her, long and hard and deep. His tongue swept across hers, his lips branding hers. I love you. The words hung in the dusty air between them. Had he said them out loud? Her body quivered with a little after shocks, and she sighed, her warm breath both tickling and cooling his heated skin. His heart seemed to hesitate between beats, and as he waited for her reaction. Me too, you. His heart started again, steady this time, and he breathed. Those 3 words were enough for him now. He cradled her against his side and let her doze. He'd get up and dressed in a few minutes and walk the colt. Until then, he wanted nothing more from life than this woman in his arms. Now that he admitted his feelings aloud, Chance needed this respite from his guilt and his indecision. He could follow his heart, betray his family, love the woman in his arms, or he could betray her. The choices sucked and the devil sitting on his shoulder whispered that he'd resent Cassie for driving a wedge between him and his brothers. He cursed softly even as the tightness his arms around the woman who was becoming his everything. An hour later, he had the colt up and moving. Cassie watching him, her face pale, the corners of her mouth drawn down. This is all my fault. Chance continued walking the colt, but he glanced over his shoulder to steady her. Her jeans hung low on her hips because she hadn't fastened the top button. The t-shirt she pulled on the sans bra showed every curve, and he was glad he hadn't fastened his own fly. No, it's not. Horses get colic, Cassie. I checked the grain bin in the hay. It's all good, no mold. He didn't get sick from eating it. Besides, he's been grazing on grass in the pasture and probably not drinking enough water. You did not do this to him. She looked so miserable, he felt compelled to do something, anything to make her feel better. He made love to this woman, his woman, and wasn't that a kick in the pants? He hated seeing her emotionally beaten. As he returned, he paused long enough to gather her into his arms. He kissed her forehead and laid his cheek on the top of her head for a moment. A feeling of righteousness settled somewhere in his chest. Despite all the roadblocks, he wanted her in his bed and in his life. I repeat, Cass, this is not your fault. And we'll get him through this. I promise. He planned to promise her so much more, too. Don't make promises that you can't keep, Chance. Chapter 13. Shut up, Cord. Chance's brother was waving a piece of paper in his face. Have you seen these flyers? Every store in Cowtown has one stuck to the door. He used the local nickname for the area known as Stockyard City. Chance brushed back Cord back with a wave of his hand. I've seen it. So what? So what? All hell would break out if the old man was here. You better be glad that he and Cash flew to Vegas to pull Chase's butt out of the fire over that deal with that showgirl. Is that really the next spot? Yeah, it is. Okay, sorry. He vaguely remembered something about blackmail scheme and a showgirl at the Barren Crown Casino, and being glad at the time that they hadn't dragged him into it. What do you want me to do about the flyers, Cord? Go door to door and rip them down? I want you to fix this before the old man gets back and has a stroke. I can't stop her, Cord. You can or you won't. Doesn't matter either way, I'm not getting involved. You're already involved, Chance. You can't have your cake and eat it too. Not this time. Do what you always do. Take the bitch. Before he knew what happened, Chance had surged from his desk chair, wrapped his fists in his brother's shirt front. Don't call her that. Cassie Morgan is not that kind of woman. Cord grabbed his wrists and squeezed, but Chance didn't loosen his grip. Cord stared at him, his arched brow speaking volumes. With studied care, Chance released his brother and leaned back in his chair. Cord retreated to the far side of the desk, tried to nonchalant as he lounged in one of the armchairs. They stared at each other as the clock ticked off several minutes. Cord finally broke the silence. So what are you going to do? Nothing. Nothing? What does that mean? Just like what it sounds like. Nothing. I'm not going to stop her. I'm not going to help her. I don't think she can pull this thing off. If she does, I'll be surprised, but damn proud of her. It won't matter what we do. She's not giving up. He scrubbed at his forehead with his fingers and willed his headache to go away. If the old man had listened to me in the first place, we could have bought her out and she'd be back in Chicago safe. Safe? Safely out of our hair. Yeah, right. I'm sure that's what you meant. But the old man doesn't work that way, Chance. You know it. I know it. The world knows it. If he finds out about this, it's your ass. I'm aware of that, Cord. But what? She trusts me. Well, crap. Cass leaned on the stall door and watched as Doc slipped his muzzle in the water trough. She just emptied it, refilled it with fresh. She meticulously picked over the hay and grain she put in his manger. Chance had been right. No mold. She rubbed it at his eyes, gritty from lack of sleep. Chance had been right about the colt, too. Doc was fine this morning, seeming no worse for wear. She'd have to muck out his stall soon, but this was one time she wouldn't complain, not one bit. Boots joined her. His appraising eye roamed over the horse and the stall. He's going to be fine, baby girl. He nudged her with his shoulder. And I have news about your flyers. We'll have some help with the herd. She glanced at him as he continued. The agriculture teacher over from the high school called. He's got some FFA boys coming around to up the herd and get 'em gathered here in the big pasture today. Some of 'em are going to make the ride with us, too. They're going to get extra credit. Future Farmers of America, now that was a group she hadn't thought of in years. She'd been the FFA queen one year and sold a bunch of world's finest chocolate to help with the votes. What goes around comes around, she chuckled. We need to get those cows started tomorrow, Cassie. Big sale is on Friday morning. The cattle need to be penned and ready to get in the stockyards by Thursday night. She rubbed her eyes again and rolled her head, listening to the familiar snap and crackle as the vertebrae ground together at the top of her spine. I got all the permits for the Canadian county, and the commissioner from Oklahoma County says he'll have a set ready today. Nadine's offered to feed everyone. She's shutting down the four corners and is going to drive the RV. She'll set up camp and have us food ready for the crew morning and night. But she can't close the diner. She'll lose too much money, Uncle Boots. He patted her shoulder, his grin adding more crinkles to his weather-worn cheeks. Honey, she wouldn't miss this for the world. She closes a week for vacation every year anyway, so this is her vacation. Cass rubbed her chest to ease the tightness forming there. This is going to work, Uncle Boots. Yep. Boots could be a man of few words. I guess I'd better go pick up those permits, huh? Yep. He dug his pocket and handed over the keys to the truck. Cass perched on the tailgate of Boots' truck and tried not to laugh. She really did. But the sight of this group of high school kids flapping their arms and waving their hats as they tried to funnel the herd through the gate while on their foot had doubled her over. She lightly punched Boots' arm as he leaned next to her. That's just mean. Yep. The ag teacher laughed along with her. They need to taste a little vinegar. Ranching is hard. The sooner they learn that, the better. This life ain't a glorified Western movie. Boy, isn't that the truth. Still, I always reminded of that speech John Wayne makes in the movie McClintock. The one where he's talking to his daughter about how he didn't plan to leave her the whole ranch, just a little startup place. There's a whole lot of person to do become a rancher. Cass stared at the teacher, struck dumb by the revelation. She watched the kids work sober now in her reflection. In many ways, her dad had given her that same speech, but in his actions and not his words. She ran off to the world and forgot lessons that she learned here in this place. She forgot what home felt like, and now she remembered, thanks to Boots and Chance. Her heart hammered with fierce pride for the first time in 10 years. She turned her head slightly to look at Boots, and a small smile hovered at the corner of her mouth. Squeezing the old man's arm, she leaned in and planted an impulsive kiss on his cheek. What was that for? For helping me realize that I'm home. She laughed as a boy tripped and face planted in the pasture. A girl helped him up, and the two of them jogged after a steer refusing to go through the gate. God help me with this bunch, but by golly, we're going to get this herd to market. Chance's absence kept this from being perfect. She knew he was busy. Lawyers with their own law firms were. Her feelings for him were still new enough. She hadn't figured out the rules. Cass didn't know what she felt for Chance and was all tied up with her feelings of coming home. Early the next morning, Nadine's RV idled in the front yard. She arrived at the crack of dawn and already had coffee donuts ready for the folks as they arrived. Horse trailers and pickups littered the yard and people milled about. Saddled horses stood tied, swishing dusty trails at the occasional fly, heads down as they dozed in the early morning light. Cass hadn't slept much, keyed up and nervous and scared she'd fail. She paced the floor of the bedroom in between bouts of tossing and turning. She wished Chance was there, even if Boots would have had a conniption over Chance staring at her or sharing the bed. She wanted the comfort of his arms. He would have kissed her and told her that she was doing the right thing, and everything would be all right. He's busy, she told herself, but part of her resented the fact that he wasn't there. He'd said the words, told her he loved her, but everything was still new enough. She didn't know whether to believe it or not, especially when it seemed that if she needed him, he couldn't or wouldn't make the time. She had 4 days to go over just 20 miles with the 500 head of prime grass-fed beef. At the current market rate, they were selling for almost $150 for 100 weight. Even if they brought less, she'd make enough to pay off the mortgage and her dad's medical bills. Nadine pressed a steaming cup of coffee in her hands. I made it good and strong for this morning for you, honey. Y'all are going to need a kick in the britches today. Without thinking, Cass took a sip and sputtered. She managed to swallow the hot black liquid without spitting it, but it took supreme effort on her part. Cream and sugar is over there, hun. Nadine patted her on the back in an effort to ease her coughing spasm. Thanks. The word came out choked, but at least she could still talk. Movement down at the gate caught her eye. The big Ford pickup maneuvered through the congestion and inched up the drive. Chance. Had he come to help after all? She waited until he parked before walking over. She arrived just as he stepped out. He wore boots, but he wasn't dressed for cowboy work. Dress slacks and starched button-down shirt made him look more like a male model than ever, or a lawyer. But what she wanted right now was the cowboy. She schooled her expression before greeting him. Hi, cowboy. Fancy meeting you here. She kept her voice light and teasing despite the disappointment churning inside her. That whole fantasy of the two of them riding off into the sunset was just that, a fantasy, for now at least. I have court today, Cass. I'm sorry. I couldn't get the docket changed. He didn't step away from the shelter provided by the open door and the bulk of the truck cab. Truth be told, she was glad for the privacy. She lifted one shoulder in a lopsided shrug. Hey, work happens. Thanks for getting up so early to come see us off. He gazed around, seemed surprised by the hustle and the bustle of the number of people. Looks like you have a lot of help. Yeah, we have places to camp out along the way. Once the word got out about what I'm doing, all sorts of people stepped up. She inhaled, feeling very pleased with herself. This will work, Chance. I'm going to get the herd to the stockyards and get them sold. Then I can pay off Daddy's debts. What will you do then? His voice sounded peculiar, and she cut her eyes in his direction. He looked odd, the expression on his face unreadable. She tilted her head and turned her face to him. I'm staying here. Daddy's dying gift to me was the colt down in the barn. I'm not a rancher. I don't know squat about cows, but horses I know. I'll use any money left over from the sale to get a couple of the mares, and when Doc's old enough, I'll breed him, and I'll train horses. I may have been out of the game for 10 years, but I went out on top. I was national champion cowgirl. Cass watched his Adam apple bob up and down as he swallowed, then he lifted his gaze to her eyes. He looked almost haunted for a moment, and she wondered why. He blinked, and his expression changed. What lurked behind that smile he now wore? So you are a cowgirl at heart. His teasing sound forced to her ears, but she returned his smile with a hesitant one of her own. Guess I always was. Just took coming home and a certain cowboy to make me remember that. She glanced to the eastern horizon where the top curve of the morning sun had cleared the tree line. Time to get this party started. She rocked up on her toes and brushed her lips across his, her palm braced against his chest for balance. Thanks for coming to see me off. There was nothing forced about his smile, and his arm circled her waist and hugged her a bit closer. I wouldn't have missed this for the world. He kissed her back deeply, his lips nibbling at hers as his tongue eased into her mouth to tease her. A bit breathless when he released her, she rocked back on her heels and figured she looked either bemused or just plain stupid because, wow, that man could kiss her right out of her boots. Chance laughed, obviously pleased by her reaction. He placed his hands on her shoulders and turned her around. Head 'em up, cowgirl. In less time than she anticipated, her drovers had heard the line up and ready to move out of the pasture and onto the road. Boots had cut part of the fence to install a temporary gate, and one of the neighbors would restring the barbed wire once the herd was up well on its way. The old man sat on his horse at the opening, waiting to lead the herd. Cass held Red's reins and was about to mount and give the order to move out when a car flew up, for the road scattering a dust cloud in its wake. The vehicle, with no apparent attempt to brake, careened into the drive. What the hell? She dropped the reins and marched toward the car, which had stopped. She noticed that Boots was riding up at a gallop. The white four-door sedan looked like an unmarked police car. The vehicle even a spotlight mounted above the driver's side mirror. She stopped a few feet away, fists planted on her hips as she waited for the driver to emerge. She expected to see a uniform. She got a nondescript man wearing cheap khaki pants, a blue short-sleeved shirt that looked like it was desperate need of iron. I'm looking for Casty Morgan, the man bawled out, her name at the top of his lungs. All eyes turned in her direction. That would be me, and who are you? He walked up and waved an envelope underneath her nose. Here. She refused to take it. What's that? He stuffed it down the front of her shirt. You've been served. What? Cass dug the envelope out of her shirt and tore it open. She read the heading in the District Court of County of Oklahoma, State of Oklahoma. Her eyes skipped down, caught her name and the name of the bank, followed by the words wholly owned subsidiary of Barron Enterprises, before focusing on the first paragraph. What the hell? That, Miss Morgan, is a foreclosure notice. Everything on this ranch now belongs to Barron Enterprises by the way of Stockman's Bank and Trust. She stared at him, and her mouth gaping. She shook her head and bit back the curses she wanted to spew in his direction. Instead, she read the notice. This is bull. It says there's a hearing set for next Monday. I have until then to present collateral assets or to pay off this loan, she thought. The legal terms were just jumbled in her head, and then she remembered Chance. He was an attorney. Before she could call him over, the process server called out, Mr. Barron? I didn't see you, sir. Mr. Barron? There was a Barron on her property? She whipped her head around to see who that man who was talking to. One look at Chance's face, and she knew. Oh, God, his last name, the one she'd assumed was Chancellor, was Barron. Her heart shivered in her chest, and she couldn't breathe. Only sheer stubbornness kept her standing. Chance? His name tumbled out before he could stop herself. Please, tell me this isn't happening. But she knew. Her head knew even as her heart tried to hide it from pain. His expression said it all, her stomach nodding, and she swallowed hard to keep the bile rising in her throat at bay. Cassidy, her name a whisper from his lying lips, sighed on the morning breeze. God, but she was stupid. Chance, Chancellor Barron. Even in Chicago, she heard names of all the Barron brothers. How had she not recognized him? Would it have mattered? She wanted him that night in his condo and again in the barn and every other time that they'd been together. She wanted him, and she allowed herself to fall in love with him. Please, Cassie. Her name dripped from his tongue like honey, and he tried to look sincere and repentant, but she didn't buy his act for a minute. Please, Cassie, what? Please, Cassie, let me steal your home? Or please, Cassie, let me screw you one more time. She wadded up the paper in her hand and threw it at him, at his face. She scored a direct hit, but he didn't even flinch. Get the hell off my land. He grabbed her forearm and squeezed just hard enough she couldn't jerk away. Cass stared down at his hand, tame, strong, and belonging to a liar. She was such a fool. One night of mind-blowing sex with him, and he'd gotten her under his skin and into her heart. And that one night had turned him so much more. She started dreaming of him, a life with him here on this ranch. She loved him, or did, before he betrayed her. Her face flushed with anger as she raised her gaze to collide with his. Please, Cassie, let me explain. Move it or lose it, Mr. Barron. If anything, his grip tightened, and for a moment she got lost in his amber eyes. Then she remembered he was nothing more than a predator, a snake, she didn't want. To malign innocent members of the animal kingdom. So she called a spade a spade. Let me go, you bastard. You lied to me. You cheated me. I thought you cared about me, about this ranch. God, how could I have been so damn wrong about you? About us. Her voice cracked and his grip loosened slightly. She jerked her arm out of his grasp, no longer caring that her voice quivered. Get away from me, Chance. I hate you. I hate everything you stand for. I'll put a certified check for the full amount of the loan on your desk by 5 o'clock Friday afternoon. I have a herd of cattle to get to market, so get the hell out of my way. She turned on her heel, marched over to Boots, where he stood holding the reins of her horse. She snatched them and stood glaring at him. You knew. Oh, yeah, he knew all right. Why didn't you tell me? I was waiting for him to do the right thing. Seriously, he's a friggin' Baron, Uncle Boots. She dashed at her eyes with the back of her hand. She'd be damned if she'd shed tears over Chance Baron. Not now, not ever. He wouldn't know the right thing if it walked up and bit him on the ass. Cass swung up the big sorrel and settled onto the saddle. Boots touched her knee. I'm sorry, baby girl. She closed her eyes and fought of the control as Boots mounted his horse. The man never did anything without a good reason. Someday maybe she wouldn't hurt so much and she could talk about it, but not now. Now she had a herd to deliver. Betty barked and quivered out with excitement. She glanced over at a handful of drovers She glanced at Chance. He hadn't moved, and his face looked as if he'd been carved from granite. For all the emotion he showed, fine, she didn't need him. 20 miles from the ranch to the stockyards with 500 head of cattle. If she pulled it off, it would be a miracle. She had to be as crazy as a grasshopper sunbathing on a red ant pile. Chapter 14. Chance recognized the stubborn jut of her chin and had to admire her despite the fact he pretty much hated himself as much as she claimed to hate him. She mounted her horse with control elegance and didn't take out her obvious anger on the sorrel. The grim set of her mouth didn't diminish her beauty. She wheeled red around to face the people who gather. Despite her angry looks from other bystanders, he stepped back to the front fender of his truck to watch. This moment belonged to Cassie. He might have destroyed any hope for a relationship, but he still cared. He still loved her. Cyrus Barron would never be able to take the feelings he had for her away. Chance had wanted her to have this moment of glory. Even if it turned into a last hurrah, he would track down whoever tried to rob it from her. This is it, she called. Cyrus Barron has decided I'm the public enemy number one. Some of you might not want to get on his bad side. I'll understand if you want to drop out. No hard feelings. But I'm mad as hell, and I'm going to prove to that old bastard that he can't knock me down. But I won't stay in the dirt. Wow, my leg is bothering me. She straightened her shoulders and stood at her stirrups. My daddy didn't know what giving up meant. I'm not about to let him down now. I have 4 days to get these cows to the stockyards, and by God, I'm going to get them there. Come hell or high water to the damned Barron family. Cheers answered her, and she couldn't suppress the feelings of pride welling inside him. Or, sorry. No, that's right. An apprehension. If he knew his father, she would have both had hell and high water to deal with. She laughed, but it sounded mirthless in the fading echoes of the shouts of the drovers. I've always wanted to say this. Head 'em up and move 'em out. Chance waited until the last steer had and the drag riders disappeared up the road. Two men patched the fence, and Nadine rolled up the awning of the RV. She walked over and leaned on the truck of his fender next to him. You should have told her. The woman gazed eastward, where a red haze still hung in the still air. Probably. He watched the same dust cloud. You care about her. Probably. Hell yeah, he cared. He loved her. But he couldn't admit it. Not out loud. He told Cass, and look what happened. He hung his head and refused to meet Nadine's knowing gaze. So what are you going to do about it? Damned if I know, Nadine. She chuckled and smacked his arm. He resisted the urge to rub the spot. For a woman her age, she still carried quite a punch. Then it's high time you figured it out, Chancellor Barron. She's worth fighting for. Nadine walked away before he could reply. He watched her climb into the big RV, then maneuvered it over the rutted yard. Once she had the nose of the vehicle pointed in the right direction, she tooted the horn and waved him as she headed off. His phone vibrated on his hip. Tempered to ignore it, he checked the caller ID anyway. His brother Cash. What? Did I catch in the middle of something? What do you want, Cash? If I'd known you were going to be at the Morgan place this morning, I could have saved money on the process server. You're the one who sent him out here? Well, yeah, the old man said you were busy. Since you hadn't done it yet, he had the papers filed yesterday and wanted them served first thing. Yeah, I just bet he did. Whoa, Chance, you sound pissed. I am. Hey, I was just following the old man's orders. You want to tell me what's going on? No, but fair warning, Cash. You ever go behind my back to serve papers without my go-ahead, you'll regret it. He stabbed the end button on his phone and tossed it into the center console of his truck. Within seconds, it danced across the leather. He ignored it. Gazing around, he realized his family might have more money than many countries, but Cass Morgan was far richer. After 3 days on the trail, Cass would give it about anything she owned for a hot shower lasting longer than 5 minutes. It was hard to do much more than the sluice off the surface dust and the tepid water and confined space of a tiny shower in Nadine's RV. Her hair hung dull and limp when she removed the ponytail holder. A new set of volunteers had arrived each day to help as drovers and outriders. The nightly camps had a holiday air as folks visited and relaxed once the herd was settled for the night. She wished she could unwind and enjoy their camaraderie, but she couldn't, not until the herd was delivered, sold, and had the check in her hand. The RV was parked on the expansive lot of a suburban acreage. A catering truck from the local barbecue restaurant was on site with a smoker. The scent of roasting beef wafted in the open window. With a grimace at how nasty her hair felt as she combed it with her fingers, she smoothed it back and refastened it with a ponytail. Navigating it down with a narrow aside, Cassie smiled at the cowboy chic decor and squeezed past the older woman putting it on at the stove. The motorhome was pure Nadine. Cass pushed the screen door open and stepped out and ran smack dab into a very masculine body. Chance's hand steadied her until she regained her balance. She scowled at him. What the hell are you doing here? We need to talk, Cass. No, we don't. Yes, we do. I had to take care of some things or I would have been here sooner. She wanted to thump his chest with her fist or slap him. Go away, Chance. I don't need or want you. Look, you have every reason to be upset. You think you lied to me. No, not technically speaking. What? You lied to me about your name. No, I didn't. Yes, you did. No, when I first introduced myself, I said my name was Chancellor. You jumped the gun and assumed it was my last name. And that's where we're going to have to stop because the phone's about ready to die again. So join me next time, and hopefully we get to the end of this book. And thank you for tuning in. By the way, we've got so many subscribers, and I am so grateful for each and every one of you. Thank you. And I hope you're enjoying this book.